Persistent, aren't you, Mom? I'm on vacation abroad right now. Could you not disturb me? I couldn't get in touch with my granddaughter, Madison. After receiving a worrying call from Madison's school, I hurried to my daughter, Lily's family home. Using the spare key to enter, I was met with trash scattered all around and an unpleasant smell. Turning on the light in the dim room, I found Madison tied to a column. Abroad? Where did you get such money? What have you done to Madison? What? Can't hear you. Must be a bad connection. Talk to you later. My patience snapped at Lily's attitude, and I ended up demolishing her family's house, leaving it as an empty lot. Then, after tracking down a certain person and arranging for them to meet Lily, a shocking truth came to light. I'm a married woman in my 60s with a daughter in her early 30s. Originally a stay-at-home mom, I re-entered the workforce at my husband's beauty-related business when my daughter went to college. Before marriage, I was involved in developing cosmetics, which is how I met my husband. Pregnancy led me to quit the cosmetics company and become a full-time homemaker. However, during busy periods at my husband's company, I helped out with office work, so it didn't feel like a long break from working. But then, 2 years later, my husband suddenly passed away. My daughter was still in college and seemed uninterested in her father's business. I thought she might take over if she showed interest, but there was no time to wait for a change of heart. After discussions with the executives who supported my husband, I decided to take over. Subsequently, managing the company while learning to be an entrepreneur was a busy few years. During this time, my daughter graduated from college without job hunting and impulsively married a man she was dating. I opposed the marriage, thinking she knew nothing of society, but the man seemed decent, so I celebrated their new beginning. However, as I feared, my daughter, naive about the world, couldn't handle the reality gap and ended up divorcing. I think, perhaps, if they hadn't had a child, their marriage might have fared a bit better. It's tough for someone unaware of the world's ways to raise a child smoothly. After the divorce, Lily returned home with her child, Madison. I don't know the details of their custody agreement. But since Lily brought her home, there must have been some parental instinct. 5 years later, Lily found a new boyfriend. She is now in her 30s, and Madison is 6. The man is still in his 20s, a bit younger than Lily. I have no complaints about them dating, but marriage is another story. 3 months after they started dating, Lily decided to remarry and brought the man home. I'm against it. You're not even working properly, and the man you want to marry is unemployed. What about Madison? It'll work out. Madison really likes him, and he seems happy to be liked. Maybe he'll find a job soon. What are you talking about? This is not someone else's problem. I thought it was just an excuse for Lily to push through with the marriage. But Madison really did get attached to Lily's fiancé, and he seemed to genuinely care for Madison. Seeing Madison happy about getting a dad, I reluctantly agreed to their marriage. With one condition. Lily's husband was to get a job at one of the group companies I managed, and until his income stabilized, they would live in a house under my name. I made sure to get spare keys since it was my house, and forbade them from changing the locks or interior without my permission. Lily agreed, happy that I consented to the marriage, and they quickly accepted my conditions, formalizing them in writing. The period of Lily's remarriage and the company's busy season overlapped, leading to hectic days. Once Lily and Madison moved out, the house felt too spacious, intensifying my sense of loneliness. To distract myself, I focused more on work. One day, as work finally settled and I could take days off according to the calendar, I decided to visit Madison. Since moving, there had been absolutely no contact from Lily's family. They wouldn't reach out unless I did, and Lily was so engrossed in her new husband that my conversations seemed to fly over her head. Objectively, it seemed like Lily was more infatuated with her husband, who appeared to be exploiting her affection. But if they were both satisfied with that arrangement, it wasn't my place to interfere. Being in her 30s, Lily must have learned something from her previous marriage's failure. As a parent, I can rest easy knowing my daughter has a husband who's more than she deserves, but at the end of the day, as long as Lily is safe and happy, that's all that matters. Arriving at Lily's family home for the first time since helping them move, I was shocked to see how thin Madison had become. Since my time, I proposed making it easier for working mothers by setting up a daycare in one corner of the corporate building, staffed with fully qualified childcare professionals. Seeing children close to Madison's age but with much healthier physiques, I couldn't help but question why Madison looked so thin. I asked Madison what had happened. But she didn't say much, only repeating that she was okay. "You can't be okay. You look so unwell, and your clothes are very dirty." Regarding the dirty clothes, it looked more like she had been wearing the same outfit for a long time rather than just getting dirty from playing. "It's nothing, really. I'm fine with this." "Fine with this? You mean this happens regularly?" Getting nowhere with Madison, I asked Lily the same questions. While I was asking Lily's husband came back from being out, so I asked both the same questions, but they both dodged my inquiries. Kids that age are fickle, right? I mean, I've skipped meals on a whim before. She's at an age where she's still learning to control her emotions. Let's look at this with a longer perspective. While I understood Lily and her husband's points, I was still concerned about Madison's demeanor around them. And the most troubling issue was seeing Madison in worn-out clothes while Lily and her husband wore well-known designer brands. I was also bothered by the leftovers in the kitchen and the luxury packaging in the trash can. It's clear they're living lavishly, but I'm curious about the source of the money. After all, Lily's husband works at one of my group companies, and I know how much he's paid each month. Their lifestyle is definitely not sustainable on his salary alone. That day, I decided not to press further, realizing I wouldn't uncover the truth by pushing. From that day on, work got busier again. Worried about Madison, I tried contacting Lily during breaks, but she always said nothing had changed and hung up. I wondered how I could talk to Madison directly but had to switch back to work mode before coming up with a good plan, and time just passed by. I should have gone to see Madison directly, but arranging the time was difficult. Later, I would regret not instructing my secretary to forcefully clear my schedule. That day was filled with back-to-back meetings from the morning. I had asked not to be disturbed during meetings unless it was an emergency. The urgency was left to my secretary's judgment. I finished the meetings, which couldn't be postponed, a little after lunch. My secretary informed me that Madison's school had called, requesting a callback. The secretary tried to find out the content of the call, but they said it could only be discussed with family members. Having some time before the next meeting, I dismissed my secretary and called Madison's teacher. Apparently, Madison had been skipping school without notice for several days. I tried contacting Lily and her husband, but neither their home nor their mobile phones were answered. Since they couldn't reach them, the school called me as an emergency contact. There were several missed calls from the school on the emergency contact mobile. But since I didn't answer, they called the company. They followed the note that I would be at work during weekdays. This means they must have also contacted Lily's husband's workplace. I was curious why he didn't answer the phone. I told the teacher I would contact Lily and hung up. I tried calling Lily's mobile, home, and her husband's mobile, but couldn't get through. Rather than not connecting, the message implied they were not near the phone. I also called Lily's husband's workplace to have him paged, but was told he was out of the office. The evasive answers made me question whether he was even at work. Doubting the company's training, I made a note not to forget to summon the executives for questioning and placed it somewhere noticeable. After explaining the situation to my secretary, she quickly understood. She said she could rearrange some meetings, so I left it in her hands and rushed to Lily's home. When I allowed Lily and her husband to live in my property, I made sure they agreed to let me keep a spare key. No one responded to the doorbell, so I used my spare key to enter. Upon opening the door, I was hit by a stifling air and an indescribable foul smell. This isn't normal, I thought as I entered and found Madison tied to a pillar. She didn't respond when I called her name, so I quickly called an ambulance. The dispatcher told me there were things I could help with until the paramedics arrived. Each time I was asked about Madison's condition, I checked and reported back, and when told to untie her and lay her down gently, I did just that. Nowadays, you can get live video instructions on your smartphone for proper first aid. As I was frantically tending to Madison, I could hear the siren getting closer. The dispatcher kept reassuring me that help was nearly there, which was incredibly comforting. Then, I heard the paramedics calling from outside the door, and the call ended. Even after the ambulance arrived, it wasn't a simple matter of rushing to the hospital. The paramedics did what they could on site while searching for a hospital that could take her. I tried contacting Lily again to inform her of the situation and to find out where Madison's insurance card was and which hospital she was taken to. This time, I didn't bother calling Lily's husband but instead kept calling Lily's phone persistently until she finally picked up, probably annoyed. "What do you want?" "You're being persistent."
Where are you? Come back immediately.
"I can't. We're on a couple's vacation abroad."
Abroad? What do you mean?
When I pressed her with a stern tone, Lily clicked her tongue and hung up unilaterally. After that, it seemed Lily turned off her phone, as I couldn't get through anymore. Lily's husband did the same. When I told the paramedics I didn't know which hospital Madison was previously treated at, they informed me a pediatric hospital at a university would take her in. Which was a relief. At the hospital, doctors and nurses, who had been briefed by the paramedics on Madison's condition, were waiting to receive her. She was immediately taken to a treatment room, and although I was asked about any allergies, I couldn't provide answers. I mentioned that I hadn't seen any allergic reactions during the years we lived together, and they began treating Madison. Waiting for Madison's treatment. I felt incredibly alone and kept wishing my deceased husband was there with me, praying to him not to take Madison away. After the treatment, the doctor called me aside. To say it was a close call, but Madison was stable now, though she was severely weakened and needed to stay in the hospital for a while. They were concerned about her being smaller than other children her age, and mentioned some troubling marks hidden by her clothes that needed further investigation. Depending on the circumstances of how the marks were made, I was sternly told that I might have to contact the appropriate authorities. Since I couldn't get in touch with Madison's parents, they planned to ask her directly once she regained consciousness. I had to prepare for Madison's hospital stay, which meant I couldn't return to work, so I contacted my company. I have trusted colleagues there, so I asked if they could share the workload. They understood the situation and told me to stay with Madison. I went back to Lily's house to gather some clothes for Madison, but found that she only had the clothes she was wearing. There were no others suitable for her current size, only clothes from her younger years. It seemed Lily hadn't bought any new clothes for Madison since moving to this house. I bought the necessary items and returned to the hospital, where Madison had just woken up. She seemed a bit more lively with the foredrip, though I wondered if it was just my wishful thinking. When I asked if she could talk, she nodded slightly but looked at me with anxious eyes. I told her that Lily wasn't here and wouldn't be coming back to the US for a while, which seemed to comfort her a bit. Madison slowly started talking about life since Lily remarried. The new stepfather had been very kind to her until the marriage. I had seen that kindness myself when he first met Madison. But after I approved their marriage and arranged a house for Lily's family, the reality was far from what Madison had hoped for. Lily became increasingly focused on pleasing her new husband, neglecting Madison even more than before. Lily started living lavishly to keep her husband happy. But Madison became more of a nuisance to them, and there were days she felt invisible. Being fed once a day was considered lucky. Whenever my new dad was in a bad mood, I was locked in the storage shed. What the heck? Hearing this, I was torn between disbelief at Lily's cruelty and a nagging feeling that it was all too possible. Where did the money for their luxury come from, I wondered. I haven't heard any news about Lily starting to work, nor has her husband's salary increased. I wondered if his parents were supporting them, but Lily had said they were estranged when she remarried. That's why the ceremony was just a small gathering of friends, like a dinner party. That leaves only one source for the money. Madison's hospital had strict visiting hours due to its full nursing care policy. After visiting hours ended, I headed back to Lily's family home. It seemed Lily had neglected housework too, the stench hadn't dissipated, and opening any cupboard or closet unleashed a cascade of trash. I turned the house upside down looking for something specific and eventually found it inside the toilet tank. Fortunately wrapped in plastic, so it was undamaged. It was note of a bank account information I had set aside for Madison, given to Lily when she moved out for her remarriage, telling her to use it in case of emergency. My late husband had also saved money in an account under Lily's name, which I handed over on her 18th birthday. Once given, how she used it was her choice, so I didn't know what it was spent on. But the savings for Madison should have been used for her benefit. Ideally not until she came of age. However, given Lily and her husband's behavior, I had a faint premonition that wouldn't happen. To my expectation, yet still shocking, the account was almost empty within less than a year of their marriage, completely drained. Yet, the mystery wasn't solved. Even if they had spent all the savings meant for Madison, It wouldn't cover their extravagant lifestyle, much less a trip abroad. I had a detective agency, with whom I've grown familiar through running my company, investigate them urgently. I never thought I'd have to spend money to investigate my own family. Days later, the couple, blissfully unaware their home no longer existed, returned from their overseas enjoyment. Naturally, they were shocked to find their house gone and came to confront me in anger. In a bold move, I had hired a company to dispose of all their belongings and demolish the house, turning it into an empty lot. As expected, they came to me, livid.
What is the meaning of this? You had no right to destroy our home.
That house was in my name, and I have every right to decide what to do with it, especially after you turned it into a garbage dump. I couldn't sell it if I wanted to, so I had it cleared. Realizing they had been living rent-free in a house owned by someone else, their complaints halted. I immediately pressed them about how they treated Madison. Malnourished, bruised, dirty clothes, and skin issues from not taking a shower. I pressed them on what kind of parenting they had provided. They're just picky eaters, refusing meals by saying they dislike this and that. They claimed that Madison chose not to eat of her own will. They claimed Madison chose not to eat and was stubborn about not changing clothes or taking a shower. As far as I knew, Madison was not picky and loved taking a shower. When asked about tying her to a pillar, they said it was because her tantrums and violence had escalated. They had no choice but to restrain her lightly so she could free herself. They insisted they left food for her while they were away. We left food for the child to eat while we were gone, so we did prepare meals for her during our absence. The bruises, they claimed, were from Madison hurting herself while throwing tantrums. The food they said they left was no better than trash to me. I wished they could eat it themselves to prove it was edible. Confronting them about depleting Madison's savings, their demeanor changed. Yet they insisted it was spent on her needs, listing expensive school materials and trendy games to prevent her from feeling left out. But having checked the house and its contents, there was no sign of such purchases. Especially not the gaming console they mentioned. Even if they had bought expensive toys, it wouldn't justify the drained savings. Enough, I've heard your side. Now, it's my turn. There's someone I want you to meet. I called for the person waiting in the other room. When the called individual appeared before Lily, her mouth dropped open in shock.
Why is Yosef here?
Yosef was the name of Lily's previous husband. This time, I took the actions of Lily and her husband towards Madison very seriously and had a detective agency locate Yosef. After divorcing Lily, Yosef had quit his job and was starting a new life abroad. He was surprised by my sudden contact, but after I explained the situation, he immediately returned to visit Madison in the hospital.
You said a child is a part of oneself, and you promised to take care of Madison, right? I respected that feeling. I can't leave my child in the care of someone who would let this happen.
Yosef declared he would take custody of Madison. I had already hired a lawyer and started the proceedings, and I informed him that Madison also wanted to live with her biological father.
What?
It's because you were stingy and didn't pay child support. If you wanted proper child care, you should have provided the necessary funds.
You refused child support and said just having your child by your side is enough.
When Lily returned home, she didn't share much. I didn't intend to question the decisions of my adult daughter, so I didn't inquire further. Reuniting with Yosef and hearing the details leading to their divorce shocked me. Lily's spending had drained their finances, prompting Yosef to file for divorce. He couldn't entrust the child to a spendthrift mother, and they argued about it. However, Lily vehemently claimed her maternal rights, promising to take proper care of their child if she returned to her parental home, and Yosef relented. Partly because he had heard that children need their mother at a certain age. The substantial debt Lily accumulated was settled in the divorce through property division. I had wondered why Lily didn't seek alimony or child support upon returning, but understanding the circumstances, it made sense she wouldn't tell me. If I didn't come back with the child, Mom wouldn't let me in the house, and I thought if I returned home, Mom would take care of the child care, so there's no problem, right? At the time of her remarriage, she had planned to insist that Madison was attached to her new partner, leaving her no choice but to take her along. Hearing my daughter laugh carelessly about it chilled me. It felt like I was facing a demon wearing my daughter's face, using Madison to fulfill her selfish desires. I immediately told Lily and her husband that I was cutting ties with them. Then, their previously defiant attitude changed completely.
Wait, Mom. If you abandon us now, what will we do? Madison will be gone, and you're my only blood relative.
What does blood relation matter? That has nothing to do with the bonds between people. I believe there are things that can be built even without blood ties.
No, don't abandon me. You're all I have to rely on.
Wasn't it the same for Madison, who could only rely on her mother? What you did to Madison is exactly what I'm doing to you. Lily's husband, trying to support her plea, also begged me to reconsider. I revealed that I knew he hadn't been going to work but was pretending to, exploiting someone's weakness. It's wage theft, and I'm filing a police report to recover that amount. We'll communicate through lawyers from now on, so leave my house immediately. I told them like that. However, Lily and her husband stubbornly refused to leave, repeating their request for me to reconsider. That's when Yosef, having had enough, raised his voice and forcefully removed them from the house. At that moment, a detective familiar with the case arrived. He said he needed to speak with Lily and her husband and took them away, preventing any further disturbance in the neighborhood. Eventually, Lily and her husband were prosecuted for restraining Madison and received prison sentences. This case caused quite a stir for a while, and I doubt they will be easily accepted back into society after serving their sentences. Especially in today's age where personal information and photos quickly spread online. I was concerned about how this would affect my company, but my decision to report my daughter to the police without shielding her was viewed positively, preventing any significant fallout, like a stock crash. Moving forward, I plan to take this matter seriously, work hard, and aim for trust recovery. Lily's husband was fired from the company after an employee he had coerced into complicity filed a complaint, adding to his charges of extortion alongside his actions towards Madison. Yosef was deeply pained by learning what Lily had done to Madison, blaming himself. After causing her so much pain, I want Madison to be happy and I want to help her with that as much as I can, which is why I regained custody of her. He also quit his job abroad and returned to US. While Yosef was settling back into life here, he worked as a contract employee at my company for a while. But Yosef, being talented, was quickly hired by a major company and moved close to his new workplace. I still see Madison regularly. I believe Yosef and I have built a good relationship.